The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He makes me lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside still waters. He restores my soul. He leads me in the right paths for his name's sake. Even though I walk through the darkest valley, I fear no evil, for you are with me. Your rod and your staff, they comfort me. You prepare a table before me in the presence of my enemies. You anoint my head with oil, and my cup overflows. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I shall dwell in the house of the Lord my whole life long. Through these words, our God is still speaking.
Thanks be to our still speaking God.
Amen. Why? Why? Since people have been worshiping a god or gods, they've been asking the question, why? Why would God allow bad things to happen? Why would God send a tsunami to wipe out thousands of people? Why wouldn't God stop a madman from picking up a gun and going into a school and killing children? Why wouldn't God cure my wife of her cancer? Why? And there are answers to that question. Theologians have plenty of answers. Well, there's lots of ways of looking at it, they say. Well, perhaps this tragic event is really just part of God's plan, and us as finite beings, we don't see the whole picture. That's hard to take. I can't see how God could use the Holocaust or someone slowly dying of ALS as part of some larger plan. That makes God sadistic. Or we hear, this is a test. Right? What we're going through is a test. God's testing us so we will have faith. Well, that's a pretty, God really has low self-esteem with that. You don't love me enough. It's a very small God. Another one is it's a process of soul craft, right? The struggle, this pain, right, brings out the best of who we are. Empathy, courage, resilience. And some of that's true, but I think there's only so much a soul can take, and it's just piling on. The only real answer, the only real one that works to the question of why is we don't know. We do not know why bad things happen. Once I went to visit a parishioner in the hospital. Let's call him Jim. And he had been recently diagnosed with an inoperable brain tumor. It was in a place and they couldn't remove it. It was malignant. But they could shrink it with radiation. So this was going to allow him to prolong his life, to get a few more months, maybe even a year with his family. And when I made it to the hospital and finally to his room, his wife Mary was coming out. And she said, "This isn't a good time. I appreciate you coming, but the radiation just wipes him out. He has no energy left. He's not really up for talking." So we went to the family waiting room, and over a few cups of bad hospital coffee, she talked about the tragedy of it all. She talked about his treatments and how they wiped him out. And she talked about her greatest fear, that maybe this was all for nothing. Maybe we're just torturing the poor man until he finally dies. And then there was this pause, this probably only a few minutes, but when you're talking about something heavy, it seems like forever. And at the end of this pause, she looked at me, and I always remember this look on her face and her eyes, this tremendous amount of anger over the injustice of it all. And she says, "Pastor Scott, where is God in all of this? Where is God?" That you may have an answer, at least a way of understanding that versus why. Where is God in our suffering? And what I see and what my faith says to me is that God is right down there in the middle of it all. ride along with us in that deep and dark valley of pain, of loneliness, of exclusion. That is the message of the 23rd Psalm. Right? The Psalm doesn't say if we go down into the valley of deathly darkness. It assumes that we will, that it's as part of life. We don't understand it. But the Psalm says we don't stay at the entrance. We don't find our way around it. We don't live within it. But God, our loving shepherd, is leading us through it and into new life. And that's such a classic image of God. God is shepherd. God is one who leads us through these times of tragedy. But it doesn't quite resonate as it did when this was initially written. You probably don't run into a lot of shepherds. Sure. I don't know the last time you were on a plane and turned to somebody and said, what is it you do for a living? They said, well, I tend to my flock. You don't hear them. You don't see them. Kind of thought they didn't exist anymore. Or so I thought. When my seminary class took a trip to Israel, we went down to the Negev, down in the desert, the southern part, to see these ruins in it was the ancient city of Mamshit. I had to really learn how to pronounce that, otherwise I would be swearing here. It's spelled in a horrible way, but Mamshit is the way you say it. And it's this ancient culture called the Nabateans. They established this city of Mamshit down in the desert between the rest of the Middle East and Israel, going all the way up to the Mediterranean. It was this sort of hub for the trade route, for spices, for incense. So it was quite a wealthy city in its day, about 2,000 years ago. And as we well-fed, sweaty seminarians made our way around, we saw how wonderful the city was, even if it was just, some walls still left. There were great stables where they raised Arabian horses. There were some ancient churches, some of the oldest Christian churches that we know that were still there, with these ornate patterns on the ground, these mosaics with birds and different images. And as we're running around taking pictures of all of these things, I look off in the distance, right? Just this picture of this desert wasteland. For Star Wars fans, it's like Tatooine. Just this desert, there's nothing there. And I look over and I think I'm seeing things, right? I see this person just clad all in black. It's black robes, black kind of turban. And my first thought, since, I don't know, it's just how my brain works, I thought, well, why is there a ninja walking out in the desert? I'm sure you've all heard about the desert ninjas. It's been in the news. I couldn't figure out, well, who is this person out there? Why would anybody be out in this place? There's nothing here other than these ruins. And so I asked the tour guide, I said, who is that? So, well, that's a Bedouin, an Arabic-speaking tribe that lives pretty much how they've always lived for the last 1,000 years. And he's a shepherd. And if you look, you can see a few little, fuzzy bumps going around in these sheep that he was tending to. And without their shepherd, these sheep wouldn't find the kind of sparse wells that were hidden around the place, or the scrub brush that they could feed upon. The shepherd was vitally important to their survival. And so it gave me a new appreciation of what it means to be shepherd or to shepherd others. And that image, that desert, that wasteland, that wilderness, it's a metaphor for where we all find ourselves from time to time. The place where you probably heard the 23rd Psalm. Maybe it was at a funeral for a loved one. Or maybe it was recited at the bedside of someone you cared about who wasn't going to make it. These words that show us that we're not alone in our pain, that our loving shepherd is there with us. It was a psalm that first came to mind to Rabbi Kushner after 9/11. He said on that day, everybody was asking him, so was the whole congregation, strangers, where was God on that Tuesday? How could God let such a bad thing happen? And the answer he gave them was, God's promise was never that life would be fair. God's promise was, when it's your turn to confront the unfairness of life, no matter how hard it is, you'll be able to handle it. because God will be on your side. God will give you the strength to make your way through. He continues and says, the psalmist is not saying, I will fear no evil, because evil only happens to bad people. He's saying, I will fear no evil because evil is not what God is about. God is not on the side of the hijacker. God is not on the side of the illness. God is not on the side of the bad thing that happened. God is on my side. And that's enough to give me confidence. It's enough to give me confidence that I can make it through this unpredictable and frightening world. And we can make it through this unpredictable and frightening world because we're not alone. We're not alone when we journey through that dark valley. Our loving shepherd walks with us, often taking the form of friends and family. If Christianity is anything, it's an incarnational faith. Spirit has to be embodied in hands and feet to care for those who find themselves in that dark and unforgiving place. It reminds me of Philip. Some of you remember Philip Chandler. I think it's been some 10 years now. It's hard to believe it's been that long since he passed away. But I think he embodied so much of what this church is about. Extravagant welcome, acceptance, social justice. He was also the first person I ever met with AIDS. But he didn't let it define him. He used to always tell me, Scott, I have HIV. I'm not HIV positive. That's not who I am. It did not define him. What defined him was his service and love for others. He put everything that he was into hot meals to make it not just a soup kitchen, but a place where people could find community, welcome, acceptance, and love. The tables were never set until there was an actual tablecloth on there, a flower placed in the middle, real silverware, and real plates. And he called the people that came through the line to get their food, not the poor, but his guests. Philip was passionate about this mission. But often, the illness prevented him from working. There were days that he dragged his body through the door with these massive headaches and these lesions on his brain that were just, you could just see it on his face, this pain. I also remember one time he was actually feeling somewhat decent. We went to the alcove for a big meal, and right afterwards, he threw it all up. And so he kept it close to his chest, and we all knew it, but we never said it, that Philip wasn't going to be with us long. Right? The cocktail of drugs and our ardent prayers were not going to keep Philip with us. After a while, he really stopped coming out, and he needed a nurse to take care of him. He was homebound. And a number of people from the church took up the responsibility to visit Philip on a day-to-day basis, to bring him groceries, to clean his apartment, to just sit next to him and let him know that he wasn't alone. Philip called these angels, his church angels. And the church angels were Philip until the end. They carried him through his dark valley, and he felt very much loved and very much cared for. We all go through that valley of death and darkness. It's unavoidable. Some of us feel like we're stuck. We can't get anywhere else, and that's where God comes in. God comes into that place of darkness, that place of desolation, takes us by the hand and says, come with me. Walk just a bit further and find your way to the light again.